All right, well, a little bit of technical difficulties there, but we're back. This is the X-Files CCG discussion, state of the game, the fan-made expansions. We're starting a little late and I had to restart, so I'm going to be posting the new link here for all of my friends while I get everything all set up. But in the meantime, I'm going to bring in Guillaume, Nathan,
Hey guys.
and Steven. Everyone's here, all the usual guys. We're going to be talking about all the different expansions that we are authoring. They're in all different stages of production. So we're going to be talking about each one. And I'm going to show you a timeline here real quick of our release. This is by no means set in stone. These things take time. Some might take more time than others. By going and reviewing and play testing, we may find errors, and one of these may skip ahead of the other, but this is the general idea. We'll be going through each of these one at a time and talking about them for you. And then this is our general timeline for each project. Now, I don't expect you to memorize this. We're going to have a little timeline on each slide so you can see everything, where everything is in, as far as concept, review, editing, play testing, and final project. Gentlemen, anything you want to add before we just dive right in?
No, I think we can go ahead.
Okay. All right, well, I will start. Actually, let me very quickly. All right, well, I'll get started here. The first one is the Scully expansion. Now, the authors for this are Mike, Matt, and Dax. They are the true authors, and while Next Games created this expansion, it never made it to press. The game was canceled before this made it. Through Mike and Matt's efforts, they were able to dig up a lot of what was planned already. This expansion was pretty much ready to go to press before the game was canceled. So they were able to find all of the original cards and their intentions, all the rules that go with them and everything. So I'm going to very quickly, oh, and I did get some great permission from our friends Mike, Matt, and Dax to show a few spoilers here. So you'll see a couple of Scully expansion and some of their homemade Fight to the Future. Still having those technical difficulties here, but we'll get there. So we'll see a couple of spoilers here for the Scully expansion and the Fight to the Future. So to keep an eye out for that. Now the Scully expansion, also known as 040460, there, I hope I'm on. The Scully expansion 040460, this is the one that was almost ready, but didn't quite make it to press. I don't want to say too much about this and speak out of turn or have any incorrect information here, simply because I'm not the author. And they have been working on this very diligently. I was told that they are in the final editing and card creation stage. This is pretty much close to being finished, and you'll see a reveal coming up soon on the Mike and Matt channel. These two cards you see here, Pusher and Agent Linda Carter, or whatever her name is, those are ones that are already on the Facebook page in the album. You can see a lot of the cards coming up. They've been releasing them as they have been finished editing and produced by Dax. But I was given this one, Hostage Negotiations. You can see this one later. And screen grab it or zoom in on it and read the effect. But very interesting card, not revealed just yet. And Record of Atrocities. I haven't read this one. Play to lower a site prerequisite by 2. That's pretty useful and only a cost of 4. That's a great card to have handy. Again, I don't want to say too much about this expansion and be speaking out of turn, so I can move forward to Fight the Future. Now, this is one that's been in production for quite a while as well. You can see it's almost to the finished stage on the timeline. They're in final edits and card creation. They're just about ready to I'm corrected there. The number on that expansion was incorrect for Scully, but moving on to Fight to the Future, they're almost to production. And I do have a spoiler here, Weaponized Honeybee. I didn't read it, but if you're watching, you can go back and screenshot it or pause and zoom in on it if you'd like. You can see the design here is pretty much the same. And then the vending machine bomb. This is one that was teased on Mike and Matt's channel a little bit ago, and it's in its final stage right here. This was given to me by Dax. Thank you very much, Dax, for sharing that, and Mike and Matt for making this expansion happen. Here's another one, Agent King. Again, a little bit more than I would want to read for you tonight, but you can pause the video or do how you see fit. These are the agents that are coming up in the Fight the Future. You'll probably be seeing these on the Facebook page pretty quick here, since I believe these were provided by Dax, so I believe they're the final edits. All right, I'm going to bring everyone back. I hope my technical difficulties have been resolved. Gentlemen, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I can hear you, David.
I think we're beyond the technical difficulties. And Stephen, thank you for the correction on the Scully set there. I had the wrong number.
Yes, for those keeping score, the Scully set code number is 22364. That is 22364.
There you have it. All right. I don't know if you guys could hear me. I didn't speak a lot about those. I just kind of breezed through some exclusives that Dax and Mike had provided to me, the agents, and a couple other cards. But we're on to season 4, 040460, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, I got that one right. This is Believe the Lie. Now, if you're a fan of my channel, you've seen this one a million times starting back in March. We've been playtesting this one openly on the channel for quite a while, so there's not too many secrets, but I'm going to turn it over to Stephen. He's going to talk a little bit about it, and then when you're ready, Stephen, just give me the high sign. We'll move on to season 5.
What's the high sign?
How about the wave?
The wave? Okay. I think we should have a new one, because the wave is kind of more like
Technical
red alert or
yeah,
red alert.
problems. Yeah.
How about I don't know, just maybe wave your hand like this to move to the next slide. How about that?
How about just an okay?
Okay is good. Next
right.
time we'll have a little X that you tape
There
onto
you
your
go.
camera. So
Make a whole like legend of it or something that we can follow.
All right, Stephen, I am moving to you, good sir.
Thank you kindly. This should be short, because this expansion, for those of you who are actively following, are well aware, is pretty much near the end of its completion. If you are a member of Dax's Facebook group, you will notice that the cards are being added to a designated photo album on that Facebook page. So what you're seeing there are the finalized cards. So final edits, everything that was modified with the cards is going to be reflected in those cards you see in the Facebook album. So disregard any of my earlier Facebook posts, though I I did try to go back and update those as we made changes here and there, but the finalized versions of the cards are going to be in Dax's Facebook album. And currently, as of this broadcast, he has added the agents, the adversaries, the witnesses, and he's begun adding the sites to it. And so, yeah, you shouldn't see any surprises. I mean, maybe might have had a title change here or there at the last minute, but beyond that, the set is complete. And you're going to see the complete version, or I'm sorry, the complete set reflected in Dax's Facebook album. And at which time I plan to open it up to a little contest to kick off the the finale of this long prolonged set, in the sense that it took quite a while to go from inception to completion. Just about a year, actually, because I did start writing the first few cards back in last December. But with any luck, as we proceed to the future expansions, namely Season 5 being the next one, we will hopefully be able to learn from what we had done in Season 4, and it will hopefully be a faster, more expedited process. But yeah, with 13 play tests from most of them, as you can find on David's channel, I think what we have here is a pretty refined, and I would call it a top-notch set. I hope I'm not overstating that. It's a good lot of cards that comprise a variety of effects. Some of them inspired by some of the commercially released cards. Others, like the Happy Birthday one here, are quite unique in that there's really no commercially released equivalent that you can necessarily draw from for where some of these cards came to my head as I was writing them. But yeah, pretty proud of it, and I'm proud of the work that we did with the playtesting and finding all the issues that come with them. It's quite an interesting process to see, and to see the evolution of the cards as they go from those first drafts to what you see now. So we'll be posting that in a nutshell. Yeah, we'll be posting them, the rest of them, on the Facebook site so you guys can see. I'm also sending them to Joost, who I believe is actually watching right now, if I'm not mistaken. Good morning, Joost. Thanks for joining us at such a early morning where you are. I'm sending them to him so he can include them in his very, very helpful resource that you can use for building your decks and selecting your team of agents, among other things. So you'll see the Season 4 cards on there as well. Sorry, David. I hope I'm stating everything I feel is necessary, but yeah, that's it in a nutshell. As I said, we've been keeping our viewers apprised of these cards as they've been progressing throughout the year. So yeah, so not much more to say beyond that.
So just for any new people, let's assume some people who are watching this have not taken the time to go back and watch all 15 playtesting videos. There's two very interesting mechanics that set this one apart from everything else.
Yes.
Very high level. Give us some details about Cancer and Gulag. What's unique about that, and how are people going to take advantage of it?
Yes, thanks for reminding me about that, because yeah, the Season 4 expansion, while it has a wide array of cards within each suit and a variety of really cool effects. One of the things that I did when I was writing the cards was try to imagine a sort of a thematic tissue for this particular expansion, something that makes it stand out, amongst what going to be a lot of expansions for the X-Files collectible card game. So the two, as David mentioned, the two themes that I incorporated into these cards, one is the Gulag, which adds a new section to the table, which anyone who's played the game knows includes the bureau, the hospital, and the field. But the Gulag is an added section of the table that, I mean, as far as placement goes, it's up to you. I think I've seen our playtesters typically place it above their hospital, but wherever you can find room on your table. So the Gulag, much like the hospital, when an agent goes there, they're going to be confined to that section of the table for several rounds, and they're not going to be able to contribute their skills to any skill checks that are happening in the field. The Gulag the Gulag, like the hospital, has tokens that are placed on the agents that illustrate the number of turns that the agent will be confined to the Gulag, much like the hospital. Whereas you have tokens of damage in the hospital, there are tokens of imprisonment that are placed on any agent that's imprisoned in the Gulag. And the card mechanics traditionally will be 3 turns, although there may be some cards that are coming in the Season 5 expansion that call back to the Gulag, because there was one episode in Season 5 that briefly featured the Gulag. So we're doing a couple of cards that will call back to that. But traditionally, the agent imprisoned in the Gulag will be held there for 3 turns, and one of the adversaries that you see here, Russian Horseman, will explain the mechanics of the Gulag and what happens when an agent that's injured in combat and thus sentenced to the Gulag for 3 consecutive turns, unless of course the investigating player should happen upon a keyword escape card, which would get them an early release from the Gulag, and then at which point the agent is sent back to the bureau and can resume contributing to the team's investigations. The second theme that is present on a number of cards throughout the set is the keyword cancer, the effect of which will the effect of the cancer when it's inflicted upon a particular agent, when the keyword cancer is added to an agent's card, you'll find that conspiracy card effect, that conspiracy effect present in the bluffs and some of the events, and it will gradually decrease the agent's health and will require them to, not permanently, that is, it will require the agent to heal in the hospital. So the agent will have to spend a turn or two in the hospital to essentially get treatment for their cancer, and then they can leave the hospital and resume investigating along with the rest of the team. But with every turn, the agent's health would be reduced until they go back to the hospital. So it's one of those where it kind of keeps the agent reporting back to the hospital in order to maintain their health. But there are some cards, some resource cards in there that can either help to heal the agent or remove the keyword cancer altogether. I don't think we did include any cancer cards for this broadcast, David, if I'm not mistaken. But yep, so those are the 2 thematic elements that you'll find in the Season 4 expansion. Planning on doing the same for Season 5. What I'm expecting, and right now it's in early, well, I probably shouldn't talk too much about that since that's going to be next on the docket if I'm not mistaken. But I'm going to go ahead and give David the okay, because I think that about covers it. Oh, I guess we're going right to Season 5 then. So Season 5, as I just mentioned, is in its early stages, and as you can see, it's actually, and it's just finished its first draft. We're looking at in the neighborhood of 165 cards with a handful of promos. The season 4 set was actually 175 cards plus 3 promos. So looking at about the same in around the same amount of cards for season 5, though maybe a few less. I mean, there were after all fewer episodes in season 5 compared to season 4. So the season 5 set, which as you can see is codenamed 11/22/63, is the birth date of John Byers of the Lone Gunman, which is revealed in the 3rd episode of season 5, Unusual Suspects, when he's being interrogated by Detective John Munch. So that was where the code number for this set was derived, and the tagline for the expansion Resistor Served. Any self-respecting X-Files fan will know that is from the 14th episode, or 15th, The Red and the Black, uttered by Alex Krycek, and was the tagline for that particular episode as well. So the season 5 expansion, and right now, as I said, it's in its early stages, and while there is a set of cards written, we have yet to play test them, and so currently what we have, I talk about some specific effects, but not knowing that they might change in the course of playtesting. We did see with season 4 a few cards effects had to get revised significantly in order to be mechanically sound. But I think what you're going to find in season 5, which actually I did want to mention, although you see my name listed there as author, I would say yes. I would say maybe the primary author for the majority of the cards. However, I think Nathan also deserves credit as well, especially considering that the planned witnesses for season 5 are going to have a consistent effect that was the brainchild of Nathan, so he deserves some credit for the conception of this expansion. But in addition to the witnesses, he has a few other cards, events, especially a few events that are also included in this set. So yes, I think he does. Credit is given where credit is due. I think actually Guillaume contributed a couple of ideas in the course when I was writing this as well, which was. Well, I'd written the Agents and Adversaries months ago, and then took a bit of a hiatus, and then did about 60 more cards within a span of 10 days. That was quite a vigorous writing process, trying to get all those ideas written out before they escaped my brain. But what we have so far, there is a if you want to bring in Nathan and Guillaume as well, I mean, certainly would welcome some of their input. I know, Guillaume has reviewed the cards extensively and has actually worked on some mock-ups for the cards that we can use once we get around to play testing them, of course. So there is going to be some thematic elements, some recurring mechanics that you're going to see peppered throughout this set, much like the Gulag and Cancer effects of season 4. Hopefully, they'll be enjoyable, and you guys will find them a unique and welcome addition to this ever expanding universe of cards.
Yeah, I think they'll be quite fun, and I think that set, from what I've seen, is at least as good as season 4, which is saying a lot. So looking forward to it.
Thank you. I like to think I did set a high bar with season 4, and in saying that, I certainly wanted to do a serviceable follow-up to season 4, and I think it's hard to say now at this point with just a first draft written. I think season 5 expansion will live up to that, but I will only be able to say that with absolute certainty once we've progressed a little further in its creation, and maybe after some play tests and we've had a chance to refine it. I think I'll be a little more sure in my position on that.
Yeah, but again, from what I've seen, I haven't seen anything that I consider problematic or that will really need to be play tested. Well, I would be surprised if some of those cards end up not making it because of game effect problems. I think what you guys have written is really good, and I think also spending so much time on season 4 really helped us. Well, it will help us moving forward, and maybe releasing those expansions faster. Well, at least a little bit faster than season 4.
Yeah, hopefully indeed.
I mean,
Yeah, the adversaries are quite fun. I think their effects are very unique, and hopefully not so potent that we have to dial it back. I mean, there are some powerful ones in there, but I think they can be. Yeah, I think we can find a balance once we get to play testing and we see where we can create a balance so that we're not just providing some very souped up cards that are quite difficult to best in the course of a game.
Yeah, I personally am excited for the keyword insanity to make more appearances.
And it does. Thank you for reminding me on that. I do apologize for not preparing as well as I should have for this broadcast. But yes, the keyword insanity does factor quite heavily into season 5. I only want to mention that one because it is one we are familiar with, because that keyword has appeared as early as the Scully set, or not the Scully set, sorry, the 1013 expansion where it first appeared in a few of the adversary cards. I'm not going to go into too many details about some of the newer the new keywords or the new mechanics yet, because it is early stages, and what we see now could very well look very different by the time that green progress bar above us gets to the other end.
I will say I probably push, like Stephen, I think you have a sort of completionist mentality where like all of these loose threads that started in the premiere set and in the 1013 set, that for example only affect one or two different skills, subterfuge, medical, whatever. I mean, I think correctly you want to take those and let's make a little more balanced approach to it, where it applies to, okay, we can do this variant for all of the skills.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps mitigate, like in my opinion, the premiere set 1013 are very, very skewed towards alien investigation decks being amazing,
and
bureaucracy, right, being amazing, because you can with some of those agents you can sit in the bureau and have a 3 bureaucracy skill being tossed into investigations with no risk to the agent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we actually haven't, I don't think, resolved that yet. Like we haven't had another agent that sits in the bureau and does something else. Well, actually you did for season 4, evidence collection, right? Yeah. So you have explored that a little bit, but that's probably a place where we can do more. But anyway, like those first sets are so slanted towards alien investigation being what you want to use, because there are so many cards that you can use to negate your opponent's stuff when you're doing that, bluffs, events, whatever, that aren't present if you're, say, a medical and science team. So I think correctly what you want to do is sort of balance that out. Whereas the way I approach it is like, I'm like, oh, this is kind of neat. We haven't gone there yet, and I kind of want to push it into new territory. So, like, do you mind if I give like the digging up the past?
Yeah.
Preview that one. So for example, one of the cards I designed basically swaps your bureau deck and your discard pile, and it can be played by the conspiracy player or the active player. So like one thing one thing I think that we play testing this are going to have to be careful of is did I go too far in anything, right? Like we don't want to break the game or anything like that. And I don't think we did. And this is like part of the fun is kind of pushing boundaries on some of this stuff and seeing where we can go. Like the Gulag, for example, in season 4. Season 5 has some of the insanity stuff. So it's a challenging part of it though to try to make sure it's all kind of balanced out in the end, and we're not doing anything that's going to break anything.
Well,
said. Yeah.
Go ahead. Let's finish that thought.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought I was gonna piggyback on something, but in addition to trying to bridge some of the skewed effects that we saw in the commercially released cards, I also wanted to, I wanted to try to find ways to service a lot of the particular skills, so that whether you have a team that can, is largely strong in subterfuge, like with Krychek, for instance, then there'll be some cards in there that benefit that. And and a lot of the things that we may not see entirely, because this is we can only put so much into 165 cards, believe it or not. You will see some of that will carry over into some of Guillaume's upcoming expansions in season 6 and season 7. So you'll see some effects there. For instance, like just as an example, like there's the Scully set has one witness that can change a site prerequisite to evidence collection 3. I did put one witness like that in season 5, and we'll see some more witnesses like that, with the future expansion down the line, right, Guillaume?
Yeah, that's correct.
That way, a lot of the other skills do get some favorable cards that a team can just try to kind of like just round out the expansion, make it look like a very just a very serviceable one that and one thing I probably want to say is like we did have like I think maybe 1 or 2 season 4 play tests where you guys just used the cards from season 4.
Yeah,
I think you're gonna find that there's probably a stark difference in season 5 in that it's definitely not one that you would be able to play with just those cards. If anything, it's going to be one of those where you're going to have to marry it even more so with the commercially released cards and everything that's come before, more so with season 4. I think, one of the strengths of season 4 is that, you could largely play it without a lot of the commercial release cards and have a pretty good game. But I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case for season 5. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I think it's just a matter of using the cards from season 5 to to make a stronger deck using some of the pre-existing cards. So that is one distinction I think I noticed when I was reaching the end of writing these cards, that it's not necessarily one that's going to be played solo.
I mean, even with season 4, when we did those play tests, it was, unless you're dropping a quarantine zone, it's tough to stop your opponent's investigation. Like with, you can use adversaries, but there's not like this sort of, the X effect or deep throat, these kind of like super powerful cards.
I mean, Bitter Defeat is one that stands out as one that's like, there's your anti-bluff card there, but that card's only going to get you so far in a longer game.
Yeah.
Well, and if I could jump in on that too, that's what I really loved about season 4 was that it wasn't something that Steven created in a vacuum, and it's its own standalone cards and that kind of stuff. It was designed to play well with everything else. And now that I hear keyword insanity is coming into season 5, that just kind of proves that point even further, that these aren't things that you're going to play on your own, or they only work well with cards within that season. They're going to mesh and integrate with the existing game. So that's one of the things I really love about what's coming up.
Yeah, insanity definitely is going to factor in way more in season 5 than it did because in season 4 we only had really one episode from which we could derive those cards, and that was the mid-season episode Never Again. While in season 5 we have 2 episodes centrally, Unusual Suspects as well as Folly Ado, that the keyword insanity factors in quite heavily in cards derived from those 2 episodes. So you're going to see a lot more of that effect in this expansion.
On that point, I have not like dug super deep into the Scully set. So forgive me if there are some insanity cards there that there aren't. Okay.
Nope.
That's really interesting because in a way, like part of what we're doing is necessary because the 10-13, there were cards that affected the insanity keyword, but there were not actually any cards with the insanity keyword on them. Like you had to use a Smoking Man Attacks or the Thinker to add insanity to them. So like this is I think we're in some ways like the 10-13 set kind of felt unfinished in that way. And I think you called it like bridging a gap, I think, Stephen, or creating a bridge or something. And that's really
I guess another way I would say is like addressing some plot holes.
Okay.
Yeah, that might be a better analogy.
but things that were left lingering from those first few sets and sort of unexplored design space, and now we're kind of like seizing on that to fill that in. And insanity is like a really cool mechanic, I think, in this game, or at least we're making it that way.
Right.
And I think the way we're using it, which is kind of this sort of sparing approach to it, like we're not doing a ton of cards with insanity. I feel like we're doing just enough to like make it an intriguing game effect, right?
I agree, because I mean, we're like, as I said, we're deriving the insanity keyword cards from 2 episodes of the 20 that make up season 5. So there's a lot of other stuff within this expansion that is going to use there's going to be some more keywords. I'm not saying what they are now, but currently, if I'm not mistaken, I have 2 previously unseen keywords. I believe 2. Maybe Guillaume, you might correct me if I'm wrong. Is it 3?
Yeah.
I'm just drawing a blank.
Yeah.
Shows how well prepared I am. But yeah, so 3 keywords that we have not seen prior. So actually, no, I take that back. One of them was briefly dropped in season 4. So that was one that briefly appears in, I think, maybe 1 card in season 4.
I think you've added it to season 4 after you had the ID for season 5.
Yes, yeah, that card, it came kind of at the tail end because I thought, okay, there's going to be something that we can address in season 5 in a big way. And so, yeah, I added that card into season 4 just at the last minute in order to sort of create a bridge from that expansion that will sort of lead into season 5 in a small way that will come into play with some of those greater mythology episodes that you find in that season.
So my apologies, Nathan and Guillaume, for not giving you credit where credit's due on the author there. But
no worries.
It's a very small contribution on my part. So
I will say, because especially in another sense, one of my weaknesses with writing these cards is combat. I really do not do. My brain has a harder time conceiving of quality combat cards. So a lot of what you're going to see with the combat cards are the brainchilds of Nathan and Guillaume, not so much me. So if you like those cards, you give them credit for it. If you hate them, again, it's all bad. Yes, there are combat cards. That is one thing I don't mind revealing now. Unlike season 4 and Scully set and 1013. Well, I take it back. Scully set did have one combat card, and 1013 had none. Combat cards will be coming back in season 4. Granted, I will say there's only 6 written for season 5, although Guillaume's got way more combat cards coming up. So this is sort of like a small return to combat, but you'll see a lot more of those later on.
We're going to ease back into combat cards.
Yep, exactly.
Detour was such fertile ground for combat cards because the episode is basically all about evolutionary foe strategy, right? Like trying to piece that together. So, yeah.
So Nathan and Guillaume, Stephen said you didn't want to reveal too much. So can I be a Hollywood reporter and see if I can get anything out of you two guys? Any themes or anything that you want to share before we move on to the next?
I already gave you a card, David. I
need more. I need more. The fans, the internet demands it.
Guillaume's like, I see this little red laser dot that's targeting me. So I'm like, I'm going to stay completely mum about this.
Yeah. Well, what I can say is that I'm really excited to try adversaries and agents as well, because there are quite a few agents that will make great additions to any team. So especially the 3 main agents on that set, I'm really looking forward to playing with them. So that's all I will say.
Hear, hear.
All right. Well, with that having been said, let's go ahead and move to the next one here. It's
Fight the Future, right?
Well, I did Fight the Future and Scully expansion earlier. I think we may have had some technical difficulties on that. You guys were in the back studio while I was talking, so I might have to go back and re-record that.
No, that's fine.
It's all good.
Okay.
I mean, there's not much to say about that because that is not one of ours. I'll just say that as David mentioned earlier, the cards are written, though. I'm currently helping out with the editing and the editing of the cards in there. Maybe I don't want to say it's their final draft because they haven't been play tested, and I'm not sure. I think we might have a chance to play test them later on. We'll see. There's some exciting cards to be found in that set.
I did get some messages while preparing the broadcast here over the last couple of days. I did get some messages from Mike and Dax. They did give me a bit of a scoop on the progress. Mike says both of them are pretty much done. Just the cards are being created by Dax, and Dax is posting the Scully set as they're finished. Dax then reached out to me and gave me some spoilers or some teasers there. So if you didn't see that at the beginning, definitely go back and check it out. Quite a few Fight the Future cards, the agent cards, and a couple others there too. So you might want to check that out. Well, Stephen, you've probably already seen it since you were granted the editing wheel on that one. But yeah, if you've gotten this far and for some reason I flubbed it up and I haven't re-recorded or anything like that, Fight the Future is close, and there are a few spoilers that I'll be posting there in this video as well.
Yep. There are 55 cards in Fight the Future. I don't believe there are any promos, though I could be mistaken on that. It's not what I guess you might call it a mini expansion, although it's still a sizable one because it is, after all, only one movie that is being translated into this particular expansion. But it should be a good one. We've currently just reviewed the final drafts of the agent cards, and I think we're about to start the adversaries next, of which there are 3. One of them you saw a little bit earlier in David's broadcast, but there are a couple other ones that will be a part of this smaller set.
Awesome. With that having been said, and Nathan, we're going to turn it over to you. Seasons 1, 2, and 3 revisited. Guillaume, Stephen, and myself will step aside so you can just talk a little bit about what's going on with that if you have anything to share.
So as you can see, we are in the initial concept / research phase right now. I just kind of found out I was doing this a couple weeks ago, so I don't have a ton to report right now. But in terms of the process, so one of the fun things about this is like going back and watching some of the old episodes. So we had a list of like some notable omissions, especially character wise, from the first the premiere set, and really this is going to encompass season 3 too. So the 1013 set, and it's I don't know some characters to me that are like sort of iconic X-Files characters. So like Dr. Sakara, for example, from the Erlenmeyer Flask, Roland, um, Ambrose Chapel from Colony, Lauren Kite from Shadows. So there's a pretty decent list of like characters that we've got right now that never really got their due in the first couple sets. And I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with them right now. Like I imagine there'll be a small number of agents for this one. I mean, the premiere set really kind of hit the high notes, I think, in terms of agents. So I'm not imagining there's going to be a ton of agents for this one, but there'll probably be a decent chunk of witnesses and events, especially. And then one of the things I know Steven's sort of that's he doesn't cherish doing the events, I think, as much as I do. Um, but I really do want to hit events and especially bluffs pretty hard in this set. So I haven't developed any like firm mechanics. I have some ideas about how to use the discard pile as a resource more. I mean, right now we only have like grid pattern search that allows you to bring a card back and a few cards from season 4 that pull out of the discard pile, but I think that's a lot of like unexplored terrain right now. Um, so I'm going to be probably keeping an eye out for uh, effects I can do with the discard pile, especially. And I think there will probably be a decent chunk of combat cards too. So I initially kind of wanted to do like um, a smaller set, one for each season, 1, 2, 3. But I think this is just realistically probably going to be pushing into that sort of 150 range that we seem to be sort of using now as our sort of lodestar on these expansion sets. Um, so yeah, that's kind of where they're at. Um, I know Steven had a few of those early season cards in season 4, so like Terry Wilmer. There were actually quite a few witnesses, I think, and I apologize, I'm not going to remember like all of them, but yeah. So I think we'll revisit some of that fun stuff and really like I'm honestly looking forward to it because it's a good opportunity to like rewatch all those old episodes again and be like, this I have such a vivid like memory of these characters. And it'll be nice to like do them justice and see them on a card. So I'm pretty excited about that. And I think that's all where we're at. I'll be spending the holidays here, like um, working on our website, and then probably just sort of piecing in an X Files episode every couple days and see what I come up with. And it's a very like organic design for me. As I'm watching the episode, I'll like pull the idea like this would be a witness. What can we do with this while the episode's on? So I try to keep it very like thematic, almost to a fault, where I want to do like exactly what this witness did in the episode, and then it winds up being this block of text, and it just probably doesn't work. so it's definitely a refinement process for me.
We're all back in the chat here, gentlemen. Any thoughts on season 1, 2, and 3? Something that was missing you want to lay the foundation for?
Yeah, for sure. Chime in.
Well, I like the idea that it is going to address some of the gaps in the commercially released cards that just did not quite capture the full flavor of some of those early seasons. As Nathan had pointed out, Roland and Lauren Kite are some significant omissions from those commercially released cards that is kind of is really surprising even to this day when I review those cards. Is like, how some of those characters fell by the wayside and all. And yeah, season 3 is fairly well covered by the Scully set in 1013, but I think there's still some untapped areas that can be pulled from for inclusion in this set. Although I would say, Nathan, you're going to have a very hard time finding a witness from season 3 that hasn't already covered. So good luck with that. If you do find a witness for season 3, I will be very impressed.
I'll make that my mission.
There are at least 2 from Too Shy, like the landlady and her daughter.
Oh yeah,
Jessie, the blind girl.
Yeah.
Dang it! All right, I say it back.
That's a good one.
Jessie should definitely be a card, though it should not be observation. Though I was sorry.
No.
Keep saying.
I think she would play well as an event, actually.
Yeah.
So, sort of this idea that
as opposed to an eyewitness and all that.
right? Oh,
Sorry.
Oh,
Put a bag on the blind chick.
No, she was cool. She was a cool character.
Yeah.
Interesting that actress did not. She didn't do anything else other than that one episode, but I thought she did a really good job at it. I thought she just had a feel of like a seasoned child actress.
Yeah, it's funny how many actors and actresses, like, the X-Files was kind of their entry point, right? And then of course these guys went on to develop so many other shows too. That Bryan Cranston is a good example, right? In Breaking Bad. So he was introduced through the X-Files episode, and all of a sudden he winds up because of that introduction, getting cast in arguably one of the greatest series of all time, Breaking Bad. And that's sort of his entry point. So yeah.
Guillaume, anything about seasons 1, 2, and 3 you think were missed or you want to see happen?
Well, I think what's really exciting about that is that those 3 seasons, I think, are most people's favorite seasons. So I think it would be really good to go back and, kind of do justice to characters or episodes that were not represented as much in the first sets. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And the more I thought about those episodes, the more I thought, okay, yeah, there is that scene. There is, like, for instance, Ice, I think, would be a great episode to use the insanity keyword. And it was not really used much except for combat cards. There are quite a few combat cards from Ice. But other than that, like a few witnesses. But are there any events from Ice? I'm not...
Perhaps, but the thing is, I think most notably that there's quite a few adversary characters that will translate very well to adversaries that did not have a spot in the commercially released cards. They did appear as X-File, as one of the among the 41 possible X-File cards, sure,
right?
But they never did see an adversary card dedicated to them. I would think Donnie Faster being the most notable of the exclusions for adversaries. But there are quite a few. So I think some of the adversaries that we're going to see for this revisitation set are going to be probably one of the bigger highlights of this set, if I had to guess.
So Donnie Faster is in season 7.
Okay, I was going to ask because I'm sure I thought you might have something in store for him.
Yeah.
Okay.
He does come back, so yeah.
Great. He always
maybe
back.
like Guillaume's adversary can be the devil version of Donnie Faster, and Nathan's expansion can have just him and human. I'm kidding.
I would like to but that's good. Like I would like to explore that transformation somehow. I don't know.
I think Soft Light is another episode of this revisitation set that I really want to see explored more, because that is a really great episode. And I think the character of Chester Ray Banton, also very notably absent from the commercially released cards. Tony Shalhoub, come on, he
Yeah.
needs a card.
A
He needs to be present.
Wisconsin actor, by the way.
Right. Yeah, I want to see him on a card. I want to see like Mr. X represented in more cards. It's interesting that how few cards he really appears on, and I know because one time Dax asked me, so because when as you guys know, I recently acquired a signed copy of Street Contacts by Stephen Williams, and so leading up to that, Dax had asked me which cards is he on. Besides the X card, I'm like, Street Contacts and Eliminating the Source. He's like, really? That's it? I'm like, yeah. That is crazy. I feel like Deep Throat, who was in he was only in like 7 episodes, whereas X was in seasons 2 and 3. He really got very, very minimal appearances throughout the card. So I would love to see him factor in more of these cards in some form or another.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, David.
I was going to say, when we go back and do revisited sets, perhaps we can take a little more artistic license and not have to be so strict to the episodes for characters that maybe didn't get all the screen time that they should have.
For sure. Is the X quote? This high-capacity, compact, Sig-Sauer 40 caliber weapon is pointed at your head to stress my insistence that your search for who put your partner on that respirator desist immediately. Used on a card.
It is on a card. Is it one of the equipment cards?
Is it?
It is on a card.
I'm terrible with flavor text on cards.
It's not I don't think it's on Street Contacts.
Okay.
That's pretty much the entire text area of a card.
Right, it really is.
Yeah, it's not on Street Contact. No,
it's not. I really think it's an equipment card. But this is one of these trivia things that I just about these cards where I just like every time I think I know it.
I think the only card that it could be on would be the Glock 19, but that's from Young at Heart, and the quote is from that episode. So
it might be an instance in which the quote is present on a card for which it's not the same episode, but I know it is. Okay. I know it's on a card, and it's gonna rack my brain. I'm not gonna go sleep.
If you can find it, just tell us, because I don't think it is, but maybe you're right.
Well, this is gonna be one of the challenges, right? Because
yes, even it should be on your spreadsheet.
Yep, I'm going there right now because I know it's on there somewhere. But you guys keep talking. I'm gonna
maybe
it's gonna be what I'm gonna have to do is go and just familiarize myself better with like the events and bluffs from season 1 from the premiere set, just because the image and the quote I have in my mind may have been used on a card, even though
found it.
It is on a card.
It's on a bluff. There's your hint, Guillaume.
From the premiere set?
Yes. And truth, but yes, it's
Interesting. Well, there goes that.
Time's up. It's the overcoat, man.
Which it doesn't really work with at all.
It just Mulder leads in as there was a man, he took Scully's blood, and then it skips a couple of lines, and then it just goes right into that long-winded line from X. But yeah, that's the card. Would not have got that if I thought about it like all night long.
No, I mean, like the only relationship there is that they happen to be there at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anyway, it is a challenge. Like I want to do, like you said, it's to do justice to this. So in a way, like it's a pretty it's a burden I take seriously, right? To like get this right. But it's also, there are certain things where I know that they have to be in the set, and so maybe I need to disabuse myself of that notion and think more of a game designer than an X-Files fan here.
I think you can find a nice balance between both.
You gotta have both, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think actually one of the things that when I was writing these cards, both for season 4 and 5, is there were a lot of times and actually no, I would have to, yeah, I would say the majority of the times there was either a scene or a character that I really liked, and it was a matter as a fan, and then
Right.
I asked myself, how can this scene or this character translate into a fitting card? And so a lot of times that's how the cards more or less wrote themselves. When I think about the scenes or the characters as a fan, and then just translate them into a card. And so that was kind of like where, especially with season 4, because I'm way more familiar with season 4 than I am with 5. So it was just a matter of just going through my head and, more or less fast forwarding through the episodes in my head and finding out, okay, I like this scene, I like this character, I like this scene. All right, this is a card, this is a card, this is a card, And then I think when I got towards the end of writing, like the first draft, when I was like, okay, 150 cards, maybe a few more. I'm like, okay, so what effect ideas are still in my head that I need to get down? And that was kind of where I kind of went back and like, okay, this effect I think I can apply here, this episode. So I think that was like 80% of it was me liking a scene or character. And then the last little bit of it was just filling in some effect ideas that I really wanted to have in this, in the game. Would you say that was more or less your experience, Guillaume, when you did your 2 expansions?
Yeah. Usually what I do is I watch every episode and I take notes and take screen captures. I watch it on my computer so that I can take screen captures of scene, characters, and objects. And once that's done, I go through every image and I get rid of the ones that won't be any good. And then I try to come up with as many cards as possible for each of the images that I took. And I go through the whole season. And then once that's done, I go through everything again and make sure that every mechanic that I've come up with, every skill is covered. And I also get rid of some cards that I don't think are necessary or maybe not as good. And sometimes, you end up, you have a mechanic, you have almost every skills covered, but somehow there is still 1 or 2 skills that you cannot find the right character for. So it's kind of, you have to make a compromise saying, okay, this might not be the perfect character for it, but I do need to find someone to attach this mechanic to. So that character will have to do. But and there are some instances where there's maybe a particular scene or a character that it might not be necessary, but I really like that scene or it makes me laugh, and so I really try hard to come up with something. And that's the case for one of the season 6 episodes. It's the Rain King, and there is a scene which I love where Mulder and Scully go visit the TV studio and they're mistaken for the Gundersons, and then when you see the Gunderson come in, Mulder is like, okay, it's like looking in a mirror. And I really wanted to have a card that featured the Gundersons, and for a long time I could not think of a good effect for them. And I finally, I don't know if it's a good effect, but I at least found something for them. So we'll see if it makes it past the first version of the expansion. But it's those instances where you really want a specific scene or character to be featured on the cards.
Very good. And Guillaume, I have a question too that I'm surprised I haven't asked you yet. But when you begin writing each of these 2 expansions, 6 and 7, did you write did you just start at did you write the cards as you watch these, so the cards were written more or less in chronological order, so the first cards you wrote were from the 6th extinction?
Yes.
Or in season 6, the beginning, those were the first cards you wrote for each of the expansions, is that right?
Yes, for each episode I write. I usually start with the site because it's the most obvious card to write for an episode. Usually there is
you start with the sites. Okay.
Yeah, there is, but I'm going to say I first started writing season 7, and then I went back and wrote season 6. So for season 7, the first episode that I wrote was the Sixth Extinction, and for that one, the first card that I made was Ivory Coast, because it seemed, obvious. Okay, this is a primary location for that episode, so this has to be the site. And usually for each episode, the first card that I write is the site card, because there is usually one particular location for each episode, and that's the easiest card to write. It's a no-brainer, like, okay, this episode, it's this site. I think there are maybe a couple of episodes where you're kind of struggling to find something. In season 6, it was for the beginning, for instance, because it does mostly take place in the past, so I cannot say, okay, the site would be Roswell 1947, so the site for that episode is actually Arthur Dale's apartment, because that's the one location that's featured in the present, except for the X-Files office or the baseball place at the end, but there is really no investigation to be done there. But usually the site is obvious, and then I go through. I usually do agents and adversaries or events. It depends on what idea comes to me first.
So what was the name of the first card you wrote for season 6? If you want to give us that little spoiler.
For season 6, it was the nuclear plant from the beginning.
The site as well. Very cool. Yeah. I think I told you guys what was the first card that I wrote for season 4 was, and do you recall what that was?
I don't.
No? You're gonna be like, oh, of course. Once you know what it is. It's the Peacock Brothers.
Oh, okay. yeah, of course.
Yeah, first one right off the bat. I was like, this is the whole. That was really my main impetus for wanting to write it to begin with. I was like, I want the Peacocks to be on an adversary card, and that's really where it started. So that I always think of that when I see that card. I'm like, yep, this is where it started with that particular card, and then a site followed for the Peacock residents soon after that. So yeah. Which one did I write first for season 5? Season 5 is kind of interesting because I did. I initially, when I wrote, when I was writing season 4 expansion, I thought it would be a combination of seasons 4 and 5 as one expansion. So I wound up writing a few cards for season 5 as I was writing season 4 in its early stages before I realized season 5 was going to be a whole nother expansion. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Captain Bonsant, Jack Bonsant from Shinga, was the first one that I wrote for season 5. I think, although it might have been Detective John Munch, but I can't remember which. It was like the same day, but I believe it was one of those two that was written first. For little bit of expansion trivia for those those following, if you're just curious. What was the first card you wrote?
And I think, Stephen, because I was reading the spreadsheet for season 5 as you were writing the cards, and I think you usually, if you have an idea for an episode, you will just write it down regardless of whether it's in chronological order. You do not watch each episode and then write every card for that particular
That was not my process at all. My process was very different, actually it was different from season 4 and 5, just because I know season 4 so well that I didn't watch the episodes when I did. Well, no, I take it back. It was kind of like at the very end when I had like more than 100, 140 cards written, and I thought, let's go back and is there something that and I think it was like certain cases when I didn't know what image I wanted for the card, or I didn't have an idea for an image to go with it. It's like I have a general concept written, so then I might have gone and watched a select episode here or there. I really did not make a point of watching the episodes for season 4 because I didn't need to. Season 5, on the other hand, that was more of the case where I did have to actually go and watch season 5 because I did not have a more or less a photographic memory of that particular season. There were a lot of gaps in there. Kitsune Gari, being my least favorite episode of that season. It was one of those, and really, actually, there's very few cards for Kitsune Gari in this expansion because it's not really a favorite episode, and it was not a very inspiring one. Much like the field where I died, that one, I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, David, but yeah, the field where I died did not get a whole lot of representation in season 4 expansion because it wasn't really a favorite episode of mine, and then 2, because a lot of Dax's dream cards and playtest cards very heavily covered that particular episode. But Demons from season 4 was also another one that was very hard to draw a whole lot of inspiration. Guillaume, what were you said the Unnatural was one of them? Which
Actually, the Unnatural was one of them for the site because it does take place in the past.
What were the 2 least inspiring episodes, one for each season?
I'd say for season 6, it was either Alpha or Trevor. Those are
Trevor.
episodes. Yeah, that I really don't care for those episodes. And for season 7, I'd say. Well, I don't know.
Take your pick. There are a few of them there.
Yeah,
I kid.
Oh, you know what is surprising about season 7 is that when I first started writing those cards, I thought that first-person shooter and Fight Club would be episodes that I would have difficulties finding cards for, and those were actually the 2 episodes that I had the most fun writing cards for, because they're really specific episodes and very different from other episodes of the show, and those type of episodes really allow you to find new card ideas. And it's the same thing for season 6, 3 of a Kind. Actually, I could not stop finding ideas from that episode, and I had to cut some cards because I think I had written 20 cards for that episode.
Whoa.
I was going to say, I think we fully transitioned into season 6, David.
Well, while we're on the subject, because I'll take this and splice it and put it out toward the end for after discussion. But while we're on the topic, Nathan, what is your creative process? Do you just sit down with a notepad and do a binge watch and write down ideas as they come to you, or how does that play out for you?
Yeah, so for me, it's while I'm watching the episode, kind of like Guillaume, I'll be taking notes and saying like, okay, this is a cool character. And what I'll typically do is like, I have like a phone with a stylus, right? So I have like a note function in there that I'm just like, okay, here's the character or here's the event I want to cover. And then, I might jot down a few notes about like what happens or what the character does that is significant that might inform them, what their game effect would be as a witness, as an agent, as an event, whatever. And then I'll go back later on and like start fleshing that out a little bit and what will that look like. And I'll go through maybe 2 or 3 iterations before I kind of settle on something I like and that I think might actually work. Because what happens for me is I think I tried to make them too accurate to what's going on in the episode, and it winds up being like this kind of labyrinth of game effect, right? Where it's like, okay, so now you need a witness that modifies these 2 skills and that kind of thing. And so really for me, like the revisions are trying to simplify while still being faithful to what they do in the episode. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that the length of the text that we can put on each card is really one of the difficulties, because sometimes we want to be really specific and very true to the episode, but when you actually try to put that on a card, you realize that there is just not enough room. If you factor in that you need to put the quote as well, and that the text also need to be readable because the cards are quite small, so it's kind of a challenge, and sometimes it can be quite frustrating because you think you've come up with a really good effect and then you realize that only half of it can fit on the
card. For sure.
And with the X-Files game, you have to be specific too.
Yeah,
otherwise
you do.
It'll be 20 years worth of FAQs.
Yeah.
And
All
that's,
right,
I mean, one of
anything
the
else
things
about-
we still struggle with, right? Is like when can you use certain things? You know,
Yes.
can you do it during your opponent's turn, or is it just when you're the active player? You know, there's this tension between like what should we just like make part of the rules and say, so we did this with agents, right? The game effects. You know, if they enter from anywhere other than you start the game with them, you can't use their game effects, right?
Yes.
What are we better off making like blanket rules for, and what are we better off saying specifically on a card, right?
And
It's one of those areas of tension.
and also during playtesting, we've realized that sometimes the game effect seems really perfectly clear, and then you realize, okay, there is just one question, so you do need to add to have an added specification on the card, but then that puts the whole game effect into question because there is just not enough room on the card to make it really clear. But, so yeah, it's quite. But as you said, David, we don't want people down the line asking us, okay, so what did you guys really mean by that? Can you play that card during this phase? So it has to be really clear on the card.
Yeah. And we're always going to get those questions. I
Yeah.
mean, there are always like niche cases that we have not even thought of, and that haven't come up in playtesting. That like you know it's going to happen, but
Yeah.
we'll do the best we can, and that's all you can do, right?
Well, and that's why we play test as much as we do, and that's why it's live, and you know we solicit feedback. Maybe someone out there thinks of something that we didn't. But you're right, Nathan. You're never going to get it airtight, and not have any kind of ambiguity somewhere along the line. Maybe a card from another expansion doesn't play well with it. And
Right.
we have to
Right.
come up with something. But yeah, it's always going to be there.
And that's something else I'll say, and then I promise we can move on to season 6. Is like you know, when I one of the cards we're talking about for season 5 right now, I know you guys said it's a variant of one that already exists, right? And maybe strictly worse than one that already exists. And to me, that doesn't necessarily dissuade me, as long as, well, first of all, if the standard, right, is like this, every card we make has to be as good as or better than one that already exists. I'm not sure that's pushing the game in the right direction, right? Because they're just, you know, sometimes there are just cards cards that are useful in niche situations, and maybe, you know, that's an area that we can explore later on. But like, so for example, you know, I'm not afraid to add a card into an expansion that is maybe a little lower powered than something that already exists, because we don't know what's going to happen with tournaments. You know, maybe we say, okay, this tournament is going to be season 4, 5, 6, and that's it. You know, and we're not even going to do premier cards in there or something. So like you're tinkering with card pool, and all of a sudden this becomes a better card if you can't use the premier version of it. You know what I mean? So that's what I'll say about like I don't intentionally design underpowered cards, but I'm also not afraid to like replicate game effects if you can find a unique twist on it.
I think the cost of the card is maybe the most difficult thing to, you know, really decide, because there are some commercially released cards that are really powerful because they were ultra rare cards. The cost is not that expensive for what they can do. But then, you know, now that everyone has every card available to them, it's kind of difficult to, you know, come up with the game effect, and you say, okay, this one is really powerful, so it should be maybe 5, 6, or maybe 8. And then you have, okay, but you have this card from the commercially released set that can do something as powerful and only cost 4 or 5, and so you're kind of sometimes stuck with what already exists.
Right, and you would say, well, why would I not just run the original card, right?
Yeah.
Because it costs less and it's better. And that's true. You know, what can you say? That's accurate, but you know, there's maybe X-Files is sort of unique in that it has the 2-card limitation per deck instead of 4 like Magic. So, and I think most other card games use 4 as kind of the standard.
Yeah, Pokemon is 4 as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, even if you are replicating slightly or making a strictly worse version of a card, there are maybe still scenarios where if you really want to use that game effect, you would include that, even though it's a little worse than the first version. So if you're relying on that and need a consistent draw, and having 4 in the deck might matter to you.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, hey, let's move on. Next.
Before we do that, Nathan, you still taking like ideas for like character ideas for the 1, 2, 3 expansion, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. You said you were kind of light on agent possibilities, right?
Yeah. So I only have, I want to say maybe 2 right now, but again, I haven't really like dug in on the rewatch and stuff. So.
Now I have like I came up with 7 possibilities of like some law enforcement FBI agent types that are in those first 2 that I'll just post those in Discord for you, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think we have a channel for the expansion. So
Yes.
Oh yeah, we do. Okay, so I'll post them there then. Cool.
All right. Well, let's move on then. Next is season 6. So Nathan, Stephen, I'm going to send you back to the green room there.
Bye.
And we'll turn over control to Guillaume. Guillaume, you're on. Tell us all about season 6, where you are, and what you have planned. And you did provide quite a few examples.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to speak to each of those individually, or what I'll do is I'll just go to the next slide. And if you want me to advance to the next one, go right ahead. And if there's one specifically you want to skip to, just call it out by name, and I'll find it in the deck.
All right. Well, you can just go in order, and I'll talk about each of the cards. And well, to begin, so the name of this expansion is the end and the beginning, and it's actually not from an episode. It's the title of the official guide for season 6, and I thought it was quite fitting for that set. As I've mentioned, I've done the first draft for each card, and there are currently 210 cards, which is a lot and too much. So a lot of those will not make it past this stage. But there are quite a few new game mechanics. So yeah, David, you can go to the next slide. So the first one is for equipment cards. I've noticed during our games that usually equipment cards are used, well, mostly to be sold for CP, and I wanted to find something different for them. So the new mechanic for equipment cards for season 6 is that basically once you successfully investigate a site with let's say in this instance it's medical, so when your team successfully investigates a site with medical as prerequisite, you can immediately equip this card to one of the agents on the team, regardless of whether it's in the requisition phase or not. You give it to the agent immediately, and then at any point during the game, the agent can discard the card to, in this instance, is to inflict 2 additional points of damage to an opponent. Sometimes it can be to use their behavioral skill instead of any other skill for 1 skill check. So that's one of the new mechanics for that season. You can move to the next one. Okay, so this one is not really a new mechanic, but I really want to have cards that can be applied to specific agents. There are cards like that in the previous seasons and in season 4 and 5 as well. And so this one is from Arcadia. And basically, you attach it with a Mulder and Scully to apply a modifier to the criminal investigation and evidence collection and subterfuge skills. And when they successfully investigate the site, you have the opportunity to discard the card and to add 5 tokens to your pool. You can move on to the next one. Again, it's just an example of one of the adversaries. So the effect might change, but basically this one specifically targets every female agent on the team. Move to the next one. Again, just another example of this. So this is an episode that I really like, Titanus. And so this bluff card, you attach it to an agent and you put 3 tokens on the card. And while the card is in play, the agent can be attacked by any adversary ignoring activator requirements. And when that happens, combat is fought only between that agent and the adversary. Kind of trying to reflect the idea of the episode that once you appear in black and white in the episode, that death is coming for you. So I thought it would be a fun effect. I can move on to the next one. And for witnesses, again, I tried to come up with the new game mechanic. So for witnesses for season 6, the mechanic is basically resource witnesses, and you place 2 tokens on the card, and once per turn you can remove a token to discard 1 face down bluff played on a site with, in this instance, it's alien investigation. But so there is a witness for each skill, and if there are several bluffs, that the bluff that you discard is chosen randomly. Basically, it's kind of a Langley, even though Langley can be played even when the bluff is, revealed, but it kind of allows you to get rid of bluffs. And since it can only be done once per turn, it kind of gives your opponent an incentive to play true bluffs, so that maybe that the card that you will discard will be a true bluff. And I don't know if there is another card. Oh, I think that was the final. Oh, okay. This one just a little preview. Again, the picture might change, but for each season we try to do promo agents, and we try to do new versions of Mulder and Scully. So this is a first version of the season 6 Scully, and this is from Biogenesis. I did not include the biggest mechanic for season 6. It's something that we will need to work on and play test, so I did not want to include any preview of cards, but the biggest episode that I drew inspiration from for that season is Dreamland, well, Dreamland 1 and Dreamland 2. So the big mechanic for season 6 will involve Area 51, and basically you will need to have access to Area 51 to play certain cards. Access to Area 51 will be given by some equipment cards, some witnesses. One of the agents from season 6 will also have access to Area 51 from the start, and basically cards like that will be powerful conspiracy cards, but with a small cost, basically. And it will also allow you to play cards that have a specific keyword for 1 CP less. So again, not really going into the specifics because it has to be play tested, but I tried to come up with something new for this season, but that will also work for with existing cards, because I kind of want people to want to have access to Area 51. So hopefully it will make more sense once you see the cards. And yeah, that's it for season 6, I think.
All right, let's bring everyone back in before we move to the next expansion. Gentlemen, any thoughts specifically on season 6? I'm very curious. Is Area 51 going to be a new area on the field? Because I am looking to make a playmat.
So
So if I need to add space for a new
it was one of the things that
I need to know.
No, I considered it, but I figured, you already have the Gulag, and I did not want to create yet another place on the mat. So this one will be okay. It's basically, it gives you access to certain cards instead of access to a specific area on the mat.
So it's going to be a separate deck of cards, right?
No, those will be cards that you include in your bureau deck, but on the card it will say this card is restricted to player with access to Area 51. And on some of the cards, the cards will be available to everyone, but it will be players with access to Area 51 can play this card for 1 CP less.
Gotcha.
Nice.
Okay, very cool.
I like that a lot.
Awesome.
If it
Anything
was an
else for
area of
Neon?
the table, it would have to be so secret that no one could know where it is.
Yeah, so you place it under your mat.
Yeah.
Well, maybe there's a good use of the keyword secret.
Oh,
Yeah,
Well-
we never did tap into that.
Well, that's the keywords that yeah, one of the equipment card that gives you access to Area 51 also allows you to play keyword secret cards for 1 CP less.
Hmm.
So
If we had any.
as a way to make that card useful for other expansions as well.
Yeah, maybe Nathan. I don't know. Maybe is that something you might want to tackle with 1, 2, 3?
you know, I hadn't thought about it, but actually, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there's only one card in the Scully set that addresses that, but we just couldn't really tell what we wanted. I mean, when I was doing 5, I just could not figure out how I wanted to, use that keyword because it has to involve face down cards in
Right.
some form.
Right.
Well, it just says that if the face, I think if I remember correctly from that Scully set card, it just said that if the revealed card has the keyword secret, then
Right.
there's
It
something.
means that it pertains to a face down card.
Yeah, but I did not take that to mean that every keyword secret card had to be played face down.
Oh, true. Oh, yeah. But I guess it would be a card though. That I guess yeah. I guess that's a good point. I hadn't thought of it that way.
There are instances, for instance, there is Men in Black that you can put cards under,
Mm-hmm.
and so those would be instances where at some point a card would be face down. But,
computer surfing or surfing the net. Yeah.
And so I did not want to create a new keyword for Area 51 because I figured secret would be, something that could be used with that. It kind of fits the Area 51 theme. And actually, there is one of the Area 51 cards is a card similar to Man in Black, the event card from the 1013, where you actually put that card in your field and then you can play bluffs face down at any point, and then when you play the bluffs, you can play them for a lesser cost. And basically, the card is an event card. It's entitled Area 51. You have to have access to Area 51 to use it, but then you can place conspiracy cards and government cards underneath it, and then you can play them for half cost.
Neat.
Good deal.
Great. Nathan, Steven, any questions about season 6?
Nope, but I'm sure I'll have a lot more when we start playtesting that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then let's move along. Next is the Field Office Crime Lab. So I will send you guys to the back, and I'll take over for just a short amount of time here. And the reason I say a short amount of time is because you'll see this is still in the concept phase. But the inspiration for this was in the premiere, and I believe they were in the 1014. There were a couple of cards that referred to this agent, or if you have this piece of equipment, you have access to the Field Office Crime Lab. And it was one of those keywords to know where kind of thing, where they obviously had a plan. The original designers had some kind of idea that they wanted to do, so they put it on the cards so that they would play later once they figured out what they wanted to do, and then the game ended up being canceled. So it's one of those things that kind of went to nowhere. A couple of the play testers from the original game were asked about it, and they said it was just flavor text. That may be the case, but after reading about that, I was kind of inspired, and I wanted to see what I could do with it. So what I tried to think of was coming up with a new area in the play area, a new field here called the Field Office Crime Lab, and you'll see it there just above the hospital, where what we would do is we create a card called the ongoing investigation card. And the idea behind this is that once a site was successfully investigated, if you had this card in your hand, you would play it underneath for the cost, and you can see the keywords would be included in activators. And the effect would be some additional effect, some great bonus. Maybe you get to draw extra cards, or something innocuous like that, or maybe even you get to ask 2 questions, which I've been told is a little too powerful, but just an idea, or possibly search your bureau deck for a certain number of cards and place them on the top of your bureau deck in the order you choose. And I thought that was kind of a clever one, because there are cards that force your opponent to discard cards from the top of their bureau. So if someone took advantage of that particular effect, the conspiracy player would be able to force you to discard them, and the extra work was gone. So anyway, getting back to the play there, what you would do is place that card underneath the site if it was successfully investigated, and that would trigger you to play witness or equipment cards instead of on the field or on agents, to play them into the field office crime lab area. And the field office crime lab would be accessible by agents during the deployment phase. They would move, same as they would move from the bureau to the field, or the hospital to the field, or however, an agent would then move to the field office crime lab and be assigned to that piece of evidence, whether it was equipment or a witness. Moving from then, the next turn, during the site investigation phase, you would do a skill check. The agent assigned to that piece of evidence would do a skill check using either evidence collection or medical or whatever was appropriate to the witness card or the equipment card. The card would have a standard, witnesses would have 3 and equipment would have 2, but there would be modifiers and things to take into effect. So essentially what you're doing is sending witnesses and equipment to the crime lab to be investigated. You deploy an agent to that area, assign it to a specific piece of evidence. If they pass the skill check, that piece of evidence is then moved to the ongoing investigation and is stacked underneath. Now, each ongoing investigation, depending on the effect, how powerful the effect is, would require more pieces of processed evidence or interrogated witnesses possible. You can see here, this one required 2 pieces of processed evidence and 1 interrogated witness in order to get the effect from the ongoing investigation. So that was essentially what I was trying to go for with the field office crime lab. Now this, you can see by the timeline there on the screen that this is still very much in the concept stage. When I presented this to the group, there were some concerns about changing the cost or changing the effect of particular cards. My thought was to make this a mini expansion, a very small expansion, no more than 90 cards, possibly even less, because I wanted to have people not have to print an entire expansion and put cards in their deck that were only useful for the field office crime lab. A lot of people, including myself, are very particular about keeping their card count in their deck as low as possible. So I wanted to be able to reuse existing cards as much as possible, even if that meant assigning different values. Now, one of the workarounds from that would be a player guide card that you could set aside, and it would remind you that witness cards have this, if played in the crime lab, would have a specific value to them that, and it would use a specific specific skill in order to accomplish either that processing that evidence or interrogating that particular witness. still a lot to figure out. The game already has a lot of nuances that keep our minds busy throughout the game. So I didn't want to add a bunch of confusion to that. So again, still in the concept stage, still trying to come up with some easier ways to integrate that sort of thing. But I thought it was kind of a cool way to maybe not necessarily have to keep your agents in the field, or maybe if you don't have a site to play in your hand, you can still do something by processing some evidence, interrogating a witness, and get more life out of your site card by doing that. You can see here, I did inspire Guillaume. Thank you, Guillaume, for putting this together. He was inspired. He liked the idea of the ongoing investigation card and came up with this draft, borrowing some elements from adversaries and putting the skills at the top there so you could underlay the card, but still have those requirements exposed. The original underlay that I had envisioned, we found didn't have a lot of room for text, and since some of it would be hidden underneath the card, but you know, that's an easy workaround, and I really liked what Guillaume presented. I thought that was really great looking. But that's kind of where that is right now. Again, I've had some distractions, some physical and mental health issues that have prevented me from throwing myself into this as much as I would like to, but still very much on my mind. And I did insist that it make the schedule, and I was hoping that that deadline would kind of force me to get on it. But that's about it. I would welcome, because this is in the concept stage, I would welcome anyone watching this video, and we'll get some feedback from our group here in a little bit. But I would welcome any feedback in the comments. If you have any ideas, maybe you think this is a great idea, but you should do this and this and this, or anything like that. I would welcome that feedback to help me move along. One last thing I would say about this is that it's not tied to any one specific season or arc. I would actually be borrowing from all the different seasons, and hopefully find a few adversaries that would work well with attacking there. There's always dark forces aligned that could allow an adversary to attack someone while they're in the crime lab, and that sort of thing. And possibly some existing cards that maybe negate witnesses, and those could be used to remove them from the crime lab and thwart your opponent's investigation, or at least delay it somehow. But with that having been said, kind of short, again, not a whole lot of substance to it yet. I'm going to bring back Guillaume and Nathan. And
David, did your audio cut out again?
Yeah, I did.
We do not have you, sir.
No, that's strange how that keeps happening.
Right?
Oh no, there are two Davids now. Which one is the real one?
As long as we can hear one of them.
Yeah.
Which we cannot.
No.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
There you are,
Okay.
my friend. We just can't see you now.
Yeah, the laptop's having some issues, so you'll just have to imagine my beautiful face there, and I'm just the voice from your conscience.
All right.
Gentlemen,
Yeah, well, I mean, we're about to kick it, the three of us out so Guillaume can talk about season 7 anyway, right?
No,
Is that
but,
the next one?
yeah. Is the feedback coming from you, David?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. A little bit of an echo, so I'm just going to.
Ghosts in the machine.
Yeah. Why, Brad? Why?
Well, Guillaume, do you just want to hit season 7?
Well, I think maybe David wanted to have maybe some feedback on the Field of his Crime Lab first. Maybe if he manages to come back.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, oh no.
Still echoing.
We can give feedback, but you can't. Oh no. Well, I'll just say I think this is a great concept, and there are things that need work, but the parts that I like, because I think focusing on the positive stuff is going to keep us moving in the right direction on this. I like the idea of having a use for your equipment and witnesses that you can't or don't want to play directly. So one of the problems with witnesses in my decks is oftentimes they're just kind of sitting around, and especially the one use witnesses where they're not resources. They're kind of just taking up a spot in the hand. And Guillaume, I think you work around this by, in the games we've played at least, I mean, you are drawing like 5 cards a turn, like a ridiculous number, and discarding a lot of the stuff that you can't use. So I do like the idea of like, okay, don't be afraid to play with your witnesses and equipment now, because even if you're not using them in a site investigation, you can use them on the field office crime lab and still get a question out of it. So I think that's a really like positive thing to build on.
And I think it's really creative as well, because I think the Field of his Crime Lab has been one of the questions that has been asked the most, even during FAQs or questions on Matt and Mike's channel. And to me, when I read those cards, I always imagined it to be like something, okay, agents who have access to the Field of his Crime Lab can play this card and this card, and I did not envision it to be a specific place on the mat. So I really like that, because I think David really took that concept, which is really nothing, just one sentence on a few cards, but people have been wondering about, and then you've created something like this whole new mechanic, and I really like that. And as you said, Nathan, it also makes use of equipment and witnesses, which I think despite our best efforts still need. Well, I guess witnesses have been making more appearances during our games thanks to season 4 witnesses, which I know that at least for me, those witnesses made me want to use more witnesses in my games. But at first I was not using them at all. And I'm hoping that, equipment will be able to do the same, make people want to use them more. But I think the Field of his Crime Lab is also a great way to use those cards.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's nice that, we can put witnesses and equipment to use other than selling them for conspiracy points.
And I think it also gives you the opportunity, there are some games that we've played. I remember one specific that you and I played, Nathan, where we could not draw a side because the game had gone on for so long that there were just no more sides in our bureau decks. And so having an opportunity like the Field of his Crime Lab, even during those turns when you don't have a site to play, or maybe all of your agents are in the hospital or something, like, you can still do something, and it's not just a waste of a turn.
Right.
I think the main challenge will be, like, for the expansions, the regular expansions that we do, they do not require additional rules. Basically, if there is a new mechanic, it's on the card. And I think for this expansion, it will require an additional rule book, or maybe if something. And I think that's the main challenge, doing something that is really clear, so that people will not say, okay, I have to read like 10 pages before I figure out how that works. I think also playtesting and showing people how it's supposed to be played on some videos will also help, but I think making it as simple as possible for people to want to play those cards is going to be maybe the main challenge.
Right. And I do like the idea of, if there's a lot of rules associated with this that you require the player to mentally know and aren't spelled out on the card, I think the player aid could go a long way in sort of helping that along. So
that,
yeah.
and also I think maybe on the back cover of the rule books, you have kind of the phases that are explained, really a summary of the game. And I think maybe having a card that you can play on the table and kind of have a summary or a quick version of what the Field Office Crime Lab will also be helpful for people. You kind of just put the card there, and you just, okay, this is this during each phase, and you know what you have to do. But I think this really has a lot of potential, and I also like that it will also cover every season, basically every scene that is an interrogation or a scene in the morgue or in a lab. You can use those 4 cards for this expansion.
Yeah. Where the rubber really is going to meet the road is the requirements of, how do I phrase this? So if one of the problems that I'm anticipating Field Office Crime Lab solving is witnesses and equipment being stuck in my hand with no use, then I think it can't, the requirements on the Field Office Crime Lab cards can't be so specific that I'm still sitting with those cards in my hand at the end of the day, right? Like, so I don't, and I know, I'm sorry, I know you fleshed out, there's mine. I know you fleshed out a little bit how you envision that working. I'm still not sure I understand it. But that's I think the overarching thing is like, okay, let's use Field Office Crime Lab as somewhat of a alternative to discarding that gets you a productive use out of those cards. Does that make sense?
Stephen, any thoughts?
No, I was waiting for what was your response to Nathan's question?
I think he's taking it all in.
I'm
Okay.
soaking it all up, baby.
No,
It's
because
all in
when
the vault up
Nathan,
here.
you've posed that before in the Discord group, and that was that was my concern. Yeah, and I also like Guillaume's idea about maybe if we have if the mechanics surrounding the Field Office Crime Lab can be condensed to maybe a small card that we can put face up on the table. I think that's a great idea, because I'm not a fan of having to expand upon the existing manual of the game to incorporate this. So, but I think a combination of simplifying it and maybe taking Guillaume's idea about putting those effects into a small resource that we can be referenced throughout the game will be very helpful.
Yeah,
And I think also as you've shown the code that I came up with, but it's just a really rough idea because the concept of the Field Office Crime Lab is not finalized yet. But I think once it's finalized, the graphics on the card will be very important as well, because maybe that will allow us to put almost all of the text that is needed. And so we won't need as much modification to the rule books, because everything will be able to be written on each card. So it's just something that we will have to see once maybe things are more written. And it's definitely something that I'm looking forward to try out and to play testing, because it's going well. I'm really excited about that one.
Well, maybe I'll throw this out to you, gentlemen. I was thinking of maybe organizing an offline brainstorming session with all of you, and maybe making it a little more collaborative. Since you guys are more familiar with the episodes and that sort of thing, that might be a lot of help for me. But after watching talking about season 5 and 6 and 7's coming up, it's like, well, I guess I better just sit down and start rewatching all these episodes, because I don't want to wait for season 5 to come out before I know what the cool mechanics are.
Dude, that's the really fun part of this. It's just sitting down and watching the X-Files.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's been too long for me, and I know you guys are really up on it, and I've just been kind of riding those coattails and enjoying playing the game. But this will inspire me to really dig into it and have some fun. And couldn't agree more that as simple is best, especially with this game. I've been playing for over a year, and I still miss things and play a card without the right keyword and that sort of thing. So I kind of thought, well, these kinds of player aids are in some of my other games too. Maybe this would help out, and if I can keep it as simple as possible, just that little player aid on the side of your play area will help it run smooth. And updating the phases of each turn and stuff. So instead of relying on the back of the rule book, we would have a newer one.
Yeah.
All right, if there's nothing left, we'll move on to, well, we're covering it, but we're talking season 7. So we're back to Guillaume. Guillaume, I'm gonna
back to me again.
Turn it back to you, and same rules. If you're ready to move the slide, just let me know, and we'll move forward.
So season 7 is actually the first expansion that I've written, and so far there are 221 cards. So again, too much cards, and a lot of those will have to go, and they won't make it past the first draft. So the title of this one is Believe to Understand, and it was the tagline for Closure. And the expansion is 01-2264, which is the birthday of Samantha Mulder. Or you can skip to the next slide, David. So again, for the equipment, I tried to come up with the new mechanic that would cover every skill. So for this expansion, there are equipments that only cost 1 RP, but then you actually, once per turn, you can pay 2 RP to add 2 to the agents. Here in this case, it's observation skill, but there is 1 card for each skill. Basically, the goal is to have, because sometimes you play an equipment and it costs 3 or 4 and you only use it once per game. So the idea with that kind of mechanic is that you play one, you pay 1 RP, and then whenever you need it, you can pay for the extra skill. So it can end up costing less than some of the cards if you only pay once, or it can actually end up costing more if you use it several times during the game. So you kind of have the option to use it any way you want. So you can move on to the next. For witnesses, again, a new mechanic. So there are resource witnesses as well. And you draw the top card of your bureau deck and add it to your hand every time a keyword, in this instance, computer card, is played. And so there is a card for each of the 11 skills. Basically, it's like the witnesses like Kevin Morris, where you will get 1 RP every time a specific keyword card is played. So this one, you actually draw the top card from your bureau deck. So the idea behind that is that it allows you to dig deeper and to go deeper into your bureau deck. And sometimes, you can draw cards during the briefing phase, and maybe there are some other instances where you can go through your bureau deck if you play a specific card. But basically during the game, after the briefing phase, you cannot go through your bureau deck as easily. And so the idea there is maybe to draw more cards, and I figured it would be a good mechanic to have. Okay, can move to the next one. An example of an adversary. So as I mentioned, first-person shooter is not a favorite episode of mine, and it's not a lot of people's favorite episode, but it was a fun one to find cards for, and I really like this adversary card. So basically, since Maitreya's long-range combat and close-range combat are equal to the number of opposing male agents and witnesses contributing to the side skill check ×2. So if she's up against a team of 4 agents or 4 male agents, then her long range and close range skills will be 8. So quite powerful depending on who she's up against. Can move to the next one. So as we've mentioned, season combat cards will be making a comeback, and there are 18 combat cards in season 6 and 18 in season 7. And since season 7 is the one that I wrote first, this is the expansion that I really wanted to use to bring combat cards back. Fight Club is a good episode for that. And this one is a fun one. Basically, you play the card at the beginning of combat. You draw 1 card at random from your discard pile, and if the cost of the card that you've drawn matches the health of the adversary, then combat ends, and otherwise combat continues. It only costs 1 RP. It's a fun card from the Goldberg variation. Season 7 and season 6 have some fun episodes, or episodes that are not as serious as previous seasons. So I wanted to have cards that would represent that funnier side of the episodes. You can move on to the next one. And again, cards that specifically affect a particular agent. And my favorite character is Scully. So I always tend to have cards that either affect her or feature her on the image. So this scene is obviously from Requiem. And basically, it's when Scully is part of the team that investigates, that successfully investigates a keyword alien investigation site, you can apply the following modifier to her: +2 alien investigation, +2 occult, but her long range, close range, and health are decreased. And you also get to place 3 additional game effect tokens on her, regardless of how many tokens are actually on her card. And this card is removed when the Baby William witness card comes into play. So there are no Baby William witness cards at the moment, so it will be either in season 8 or 9. And I know that Scully does not have alien investigation skills, so the chances that she would be involved in an alien investigation skill check are slim, which is why I put it a keyword alien investigation site. So if there is a site that has both alien investigation or medical or sciences as prerequisite, then that would work for those instances. You can move to the next one if there is one. Yeah, and this is the agent card for Scully, promo card for season 7 from Millennium. The big mechanic for season 7, which I again did not include here because it will need to be tested, but I really wanted to feature the episode Je Souhaite, and I wanted to make sure that every wish that is expressed in the episode could be found on a card. So there are several event cards, each representing one of the wishes that a character expresses in the episode, and it's either for the conspiracy player or for the investigating player. And those are powerful cards which require the genie witness cards to be played. So there is a genie witness card that you have to have in order to play those wish cards. And the new keyword for those cards is the keyword genie. So again, it will need to be tested to see if the cost of each card is enough, if the game effect makes sense. But I'm really looking forward to seeing if it works or not. And I think that's it. And also, yeah, maybe for season 6 and for season 7, again, I did not include those cards as example because it's something that will have to be play tested, but I came up with a new idea for sites. Basically, it's sites that in addition to allowing you to ask a characteristic question, they also have a game effect. And the game effect is if you successfully investigate the site, then you can go through your bureau deck and search for a specific card, and a specific card from the same episode as the site. Like, for instance, if it was in season 4, you would investigate the crash site from Tempios Frigate, and if you successfully investigate that, you can look through your bureau deck to look for the Apollo 11 keychain and add it to your hand. So it's kind of a way to allow you to draw the cards that you want more easily than having to wait until they actually come up. So you can either draw the card by chance at the beginning of the game, but you have the added option of, okay, if I really want to use that card, then I have this site that I can successfully investigate, which will then allow me to go search for that specific card. So again, something that will need to be tested, but I thought this would be a good way to go through the deck more easily. And I think that's it.
I do have a question, Guillaume, regarding that last effect, which I really like and looking forward to trying that out. When you are able to, like, let's say hypothetically, I successfully investigate one of those sites that has that effect. Can I draw can I go in and get it's going to list a specific card? Is that
yes.
right? Not
yes.
just okay. Okay, so are there going to be conspiracy cards listed on that site, or are they just going to be investigating resource cards only?
For some of those, it will be conspiracy cards as well.
Nice. Cool.
And also sometimes for season 7, there are maybe sometimes like if you successfully investigate this site, maybe it's a site from enemy with subterfuge as a prerequisite, and so if you successfully investigate the site, you get to add 2 tokens to your conspiracy pool, for instance.
Okay, cool.
But usually it will mostly be to go search your bureau deck for a very specific card. For instance, for How the Ghost Stole Christmas, I have an equipment card, which is the Christmas present. And so successfully investigating that site will allow you to go through your bureau deck and retrieve that specific card instead of waiting for you to actually, pay to draw cards and hoping to find it.
Okay, that was going to be my next question, was whether or not you incorporated the same site effect into season 6 as well as 7.
Yeah, so there are 11 of those sites in each expansion, 1 for each skill.
Okay.
And the cost for those sites is 2 RP, but there are mono sites, but the prerequisite is 5+ instead of 4+.
I like it.
And for season 7, I was also toying with the idea of having sites that cost only 1 RP, but instead of being multi-sites, they are mono sites, but the prerequisite is 6+. Because, sometimes we have teams that are really strong in one specific skill, and so they can, easily investigate a site. But the problem with multi-site is that it leaves you open to more attacks because there are more keywords. So the idea is that you have a mono site, but you do have to have at least 6 and plus skill. And if your opponent plays a card like, okay, add 2 to the prerequisite, then you're in trouble.
Right.
Yeah, or that Record of Atrocities event card that David showed from the Scully set. Whew.
I for one am in favor and very excited about more access to my deck. When I first started playing the game, that was my big gripe. I was used to playing Pokemon where, it was all access practically. There were so many cards that would let you dig through. Now that I've played more and I'm a lot more familiar with the cards, I realize there is a pretty good amount of access to your deck, but I could always use a little more. That'll help me cut down on the number of cards in there if I can get right to the one I want. especially like Nathan brought up, since you can only have 2 of each one, you're less likely to just cross your fingers and hope you come across it, you know.
Ironically, I had the opposite thought. I'm going to crush this new strategy of searching your deck. So I thought, man, we should have a card that says your opponent cannot search their deck or something. Or if they would search their deck, they instead only search the top 5 cards or something like that.
Is that for like one turn or the whole game?
No, it would be like a resource, you know.
Oh, okay. It's a
event
research.
or witness or something. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Well,
It's good because usually when you come up with the mechanic for the resource player, then you want to have something from the conspiracy player that can negate that,
Right.
and vice versa. And you mentioned, you know, Nathan having access to the Discord pie more easily, and one of the season 6 cards that I have is actually kind of grid pattern search, but for the conspiracy player.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
That was something I mentioned about Yu-Gi-Oh when we did our last discussion. Was there were these great cards that were just game changers, and someone with enough money was able to buy it, or buy 50 million packs and get this rare card that just crushes your opponent. But then there was a common card that everybody could have that negated that card, and that's what I really liked. So maybe if there is too much access to your deck, yeah, there should be a card that would take that away from your opponent. I think that's a very good point, Nathan, is that there's got to be a balance there.
And in season 7, there are some bluffs that specifically target those sites with the game effect. And so again, there is a way for the conspiracy player to counter that, or to make the investigation more difficult.
Right. I mean, the game is so complicated that there's so many different ways to go about. Like, it's really hard for something to really take over in this game, because you've got, you know, even if you do have those sites, I mean, they still have site characteristics and skill checks, so you can still, you know, play cards that are like negate a subterfuge card, or you know, that kind of stuff. Like, there are ways to get around just about everything in the X-Files.
I think what's difficult when you're the conspiracy player is, you know, you don't know what your opponent is going to play, so you do need to have kind of general card that covers general situations, because when you go to something more specific, then you have the risk of not being able to use them at all.
I mean, even adversaries, I oftentimes find just pile into my hand because I'm waiting for you to play a method site or whatever. So, yeah, I hear that.
Well, from the bluff we've seen from the Scully set that are on the Facebook album, there are at least some options to provide the necessary keywords to pay for some to play some adversaries. Granted, it's quite costly because you do need to pay for the bluff, and then you do need to pay for the adversary as well. So that's the
you can't rely on keywords in the Scully set because they are largely absent.
Yeah. But that's, you know, one thing I've noticed in our games is that we're usually amassing pretty large resource and conspiracy pools, especially conspiracy pools. I think Guillaume, in the last game we had, I mean, I think your conspiracy pool was oftentimes double digits.
It can go up really easily, but sometimes in just one turn you can just empty your entire pool trying to start the investigation, and then you just spend all that CP for nothing. I think sometimes that's one of the frustrating aspects of the game, which makes it interesting, but sometimes there are cards that you would really want to play, or combinations of cards that you would like to play, but you just don't have enough CP. And I think it might be interesting maybe just to try a game or two and maybe come up with a new limitation for resource and conspiracy cards. Like, for instance, in the basic game, you just don't have to pay for cards, if I'm correct. And so I think maybe there should be a way between not having to pay for the cards and having to pay 12 CP for a card. I don't know. But yeah, it would be fun to be able to play more of those high cost cards during our games without having to worry about our adversary just negating them with the Langley or Froiki.
Right. Right. You know, I think one of the other ways to go about this is look at stuff that discards cards from your opponent's hand. Search warrant
Oh, yeah.
is bonkers. Like that's a great. I love that card. It sucks having it played against you, but
Mhm.
it's a fabulous card.
Yeah.
So maybe that's one way to go about things, or even adding a touch of randomness to it. Like there's a magic card that. Well, I think there is an X-Files card, isn't it? That you discard your hand and draw a new hand or something like that.
Mulligan.
Mulligan, yeah. So stuff like that, I think, is kind of a neat way to go about that too. If you're afraid your opponent has the perfect answer for what you're doing, you can look at that as a way to get around it, maybe.
I think what's great is that we're doing season 5, 6, 7. Going back to the first 3 seasons and the field office, and despite all of the cards that have already been written, we are still finding new game effects. So I think that shows that this game is maybe quite good because you can kind of come up with things to keep it fresh and interesting.
Yeah, and hopefully what a lot of the ideas we have in these later expansions will certainly prove viable. I mean, they look great on paper as they are written and in your mock-ups, and hopefully that will prove to be the case in the game. I hope so. I mean, I believe it will, but then again, there are some areas of some nuances of that sometimes it just will not occur to us until we're knee deep in the play testing.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I'm going to do with this. So like the season 5 witnesses, for example, and Guillaume, I think it was season 6 equipment. One of the things I'm going to be pushing is like, okay, let's try to send one agent to a bunch of different sites and rely on our witnesses and equipment and just spend resource points and try to get them there, right? So you can ask like 3 questions a turn or something crazy and see if that's actually feasible. How bad do my agents get hammered by adversaries and stuff trying to do that?
And you know what, I do. It's funny you mentioned that because I don't have the mock-ups yet, but 2 of the events for season 6 from the episode Drive specifically are applicable to agents who investigate a site by themselves. So basically, there is a site which is a card which is emergency cell phone. When the cop brings a cell phone to Mulder while he's driving, and so you can use that to contact just one agent anywhere on the table, and for 1 skill check, they can contribute. And there is also one, there are police escort following Mulder, and so you play that card when you're investigating a site by yourself, and basically your opponent cannot play an adversary on that site.
Right.
And I thought, maybe, as you said, it might make people more inclined to try to investigate a site with only 1 agent.
Right. Right. And if it's, if you're asking 3 questions a turn, and it's a big if because you need 3 site cards and you need to do it successfully and blah blah blah. If you're able to do that like consistently, the game's going to end pretty quick.
And it won't be a lot of fun. That's
that's what I was thinking. I'm like, I've been on that end of
Right.
I don't like the idea of like the game being over in like 1 round because my opponent nailed me with 3 questions.
Right. So on the one hand, I don't like 3-hour games. On the other hand, I don't really like 10-minute.
I like them as long as it's not like in the 3 a.m. when we're finishing the game.
Right.
Big difference in that. I like the long games, just time of days.
Speaking of which, what are we at now? 12:45. Okay.
Almost done. Yeah, I need to get sleep.
Any other questions? But let's move it along. Any other questions about season 7 specifically?
Nope. I mean, Guillaume reviewed most of those cards with me, except for maybe a lot of the events. But yeah, what I've seen, very excited about. And that'll be certainly one that I look very much forward to playtesting.
I think all of these, and if there aren't any other season 7 questions, we'll just kind of move on to season 8 and beyond, and just kind of the general state of the game there. And anything particular now that you've heard everybody's stuff? Any particular thing you're looking forward to?
So I'm glad we're here. This reminded me, Guillaume, if you're looking to cut cards, I think you said it had 200 something for season 7. Maybe you want to consider making like the genie thing its own separate expansion of like 20 cards or whatever you have in mind. I don't know. But I think once we get done with like the massive season expansions, one area we can go is these little niche expansions that are, maybe 20 cards or something like that, that touch on a particular season or episode or mythology arc or something like that.
I think for season 7 there is no big mythology episode except for Thine and Sight and Closure and Requiem, of course, but there is no overarching theme to this season really, and so I feel like the cards from Je Souhaite are really the big focus on that expansion. Like
it's your one thematic element.
Yeah, like Dreamland is for season 6.
Oh, so, I see, right. But if there's something else, maybe that
I think there are some events and some cards that can be used for something else or not used at all because they are maybe too specific to particular episode. I think there will be a way to cut that. Maybe there are 27 witnesses in season 7, for instance, so maybe there will be some that can go, although I like all of them, but there are some of them that can be removed.
Wait, how many witnesses did you say?
27.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there are 22 in season 6, 27 in season 7. So I guess like we want
to think that's fewer than what's in the Scully set witnesses.
But there is no pure staffer though.
Yeah,
I know we want to cover most of the characters, but I think sometimes witnesses maybe I don't know. Maybe some of those can go away. I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe not disappear completely, but just set aside for a revisit.
Yeah. Right.
Yep. That's right.
Nothing dies.
I think looking for
You're so close. It's everything dies.
Yeah, I know.
So close.
And just for season 6, the only mention that I've done in season 7 is that there is an adversary card which the agent is afflicted with the keyword super soldier. So I think that's a keyword which would be good for seasons 8 and 9.
Mm-hmm.
And you've seen the card from Requiem which mentioned the Baby William card, so either season 8 or 9. And in season 6 there is the card where Smoking Man shoots Spender in the head, and so since Spender is not actually dead but he does come back in season 9, so you get the opportunity, if your opponent plays that card, you can look through a bureau deck for I don't remember the name of the character he uses in season 9, but you actually get to draw that card. It will be a witness, and or it could be a witness. There is that possibility anyway to have, if you have Agent Spender on your team and somehow it's a killer game and your opponent kills your Spender, you can look through a bureau deck and look for his character in season 9 because he's
Daniel Miller, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's Daniel something. So actually, since he doesn't die, you actually get to draw an extra card. And other than that, I think season 8 in particular, I think it's a great season, way better than season 7 at least. And so there are so many amazing opportunities for cards, so many great episodes, great adversaries, so just like the season finale which takes place in the FBI, so that there is something that will be able to be done for agents in your bureau section of the table specifically.
And those adversaries will have more opportunities to attack in the bureau.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, great episodes. And I think season 9, it's not a season that people really enjoy, and for good reasons. But I think
It has a handful of highlights.
yeah, there are some
Small handful.
specific episodes, and that will, I think, provide good opportunities for cards. So looking forward to those two. The rest, not so much.
And I still have these ideas for like small expansions floating around, like the historical one we had talked about a few times with stuff from the gosh, I'm blanking on it, but it was the
Unnatural?
Zeus Faber.
Yeah, you
Piper
have,
Merritt, thank you.
yeah, there are quite a few episodes that take place in the past, so that's
Yep.
Right, the whole Redux timeline that Kritschgau sets forth, Travelers, maybe even go to the Exley baseball stuff might fit in there too. Basically, anything that is kind of set in the past, I think, is fair game for that.
And my struggle actually opens in 1947 or something, so I
yeah.
think it could be a good way to at least
That's
include
very
that.
Or heck, why don't we go to the movie, which is in 10,000 BC?
Yeah,
Roughly.
all the way back to the beginning.
Yeah. So I mean, there's that floating around. I have like lots of ideas for these little niche sets that are probably going to be like 20 cards or something like that, that we could do, use as a filler somewhere if we ever wanted to. So
I think what we can take away from that is that we have years of work
Years.
ahead of us and play testing, but it's good that we know that all of those expansions are kind of being worked on at the same time, because we can know what everyone is working on and try to fit, maybe knowing what's coming in season 7 or season 6, or maybe knowing what's in season 5. I can use that in season 7 already, so that's good.
Yeah, being transparent about keywords and mechanics is important, so we don't fall into the same pitfalls where we have a keyword that only applies to 1 or 2 cards or ends up going nowhere. It'd be a lot richer gameplay if a keyword that is used heavily in season 5 is also in 7, 8, and so on.
Yeah.
I think what I want to do is, once I'm done with the mockups for season 6, because I know that they will be put aside for quite a while, but I want to put them in a folder on the OneDrive so that you can look at them and have at least a general idea. And maybe for season 5 or for the season 1, 2, and 3, then okay, this has been done, this can be done differently, maybe, so you guys know what's coming in. Not go as far as say, okay, we can change what's on them, because I think it will come once we actually work on that particular season, but you have at least a general idea of what I did.
Yeah.
And that goes the same for my spreadsheets, which you guys have access to on OneDrive, so you can review the cards from season 5 right now and see what's going to be contained on those cards. All the text is there, including the dialogue. Everything is there, except for the images.
Very cool. And that's one of the nice things about getting together like this is, I might do the no search card as part of the season 1, 2, 3 thing in anticipation of Guillaume's 6 and 7. So this is a very like beneficial thing to, I think, share where we're all at on this. So thanks for bringing us together, David.
Always. So my intention with this is not only to share all these and build up excitement amongst players, but also to hopefully inspire other people. Maybe seeing this, we've already talked about our creative process. How did you come up with the cards and that sort of thing? Any tips or tricks or any advice to someone who may have watched this and thought, hey, I could come up with that 20 or 30 card mini expansion? Any advice for anyone?
Join the Discord. I
Yeah.
think we're more than happy to have people help us with playtest. If you want to take the lead on your own expansion, and work that in with what we're doing, that's phenomenal. Like, I just think the more people that are like invested in creating stuff for the game and like spreading love for the game is better for us. So yeah, and it is hard work. I mean, like we've all spent many hours already on this, and just like I think it's really easy to say, I want to create something, but there's like actual like difficult work associated with it, and refining it, and trying to decide what you're really trying to do with the card, and get the wording down, and keywords and activators, and it's like it is a daunting process. But if you really like creating stuff, and you like the X Files, and you want to have fun with it, like, go for it. you know I think this is a great outlet for like creativity and design, and especially if you've never gotten your hands dirty in designing cards before. I think like this is I think we're a pretty like open group. Like, we're field your ideas, like, and just be open to criticism too, because
Oh
nothing is
yeah,
ever
definitely.
perfect.
I think looking at the release schedule or the tentative release schedule, I think at least for the next 2 years, I think we are kind of full with the expansions and whatever we can, because we already have all the things coming, and we do need to keep them in that order, because we want to have season 4 was X3 and season 5 will be X4. Season 1, 2, and 3 will be X6, X5, and then once season 6 comes, we'll be right on track with the numbering of the cards. So at least until season 9, I think we'll be keeping them in that order. But I think if someone wants to write their own cards or even contribute to cards idea, the most important thing, I think, for me, is that it has to be really true to the particular scene or to the character or to the episodes. Because usually on some of the official cards, you see an effect and it's just like, okay, they had the idea for the effect and they just found a random episode or random scene to put that on. And I think what we are really trying to do is really watch the episode and say, okay, from that specific scene, what specific effect can be used, even if it's something that is quite specific. But the more cards we create, the more we want people to be able to really have a deck that really fits their team. So even if it's an effect that only affects agents with the medical skill, for instance, well, there is always going to be a particular team that has that medical skill and will be able to use the card. So I think being true to the episode is the most important part of the process.
I agree, and that's what makes playing the game very enjoyable, when you have a certain combination of cards that plays out in a way that very much mirrors the events of the episode. That's always fun. That always feels like just an added bonus to each round.
The peacocks at the Peacock Residence.
As a great example. I recently I was double checking I went back over my adversaries, Guillaume, and made sure that they were matching up with the sites that are in season 5. So you might have a little bit of tweaking to do on some of your mock-ups with regards to that. You got a lot of tweaking to do. I know you made those mock-ups, which look great, but you made them a little too prematurely for my my preliminary reviews of this first draft.
I think once they are done, the image, the title is there, so the main part of the card is done. So if it's only changing the cost of the text, or every element is already there, so it doesn't. What takes the most time is putting the picture together, putting the title, finding room for the quote. Once that's done, you can always change things. It's easier that way. It doesn't take.
And it's just a matter of making sure we go back and do that before we start playtesting, so we don't run into so many of those instances we did during season 4 playtesting, where it's like everyone's coming in with outdated cards. So we'll just make sure
Yeah,
we have
but-
the most up-to-date version. Yeah. So make sure we'll have up-to-date versions of the cards as we enter the play testing for season 5, which is kind of where I think where we kind of are right now, in the sense of like we're about to, just do a review, a group review of 5, and then make any changes before then allowing Guillaume to do the mock-ups for those cards.
Yeah, I think once that's done, I will go over each card regardless of whether I already made a mock-up or not. I will go over each card again and kind of copy and paste the game effect and the cost and the keywords, so that way if there are changes, it will be reflected on the cards.
Now, are these mock-ups?
If you guys want to start reviewing the season 5 cards, go for it. I'm like, I still want to take another pass. I just want to make sure I feel like I've really captured the flavor of that season and the episodes within it. Not to say I'm going to add any more, but before we start doing more mock-ups. But yeah, please, guys, in the meantime, if you want to review them, if you spot any issues like right off the bat, sure, we can address those then. But yeah.
Are these mock-ups going to be full color, like a finished card look?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm also because you can just remove any element that you want from those cards. So I was thinking about trying to do the full mock-up with the color and everything, the picture, and then remove every graphic element and only leave the text, the cost, and so that way if you want to print it in black and white, you can do that. But it looks like the card, the font is the same, but there is just not the background and not the picture, and so to save ink. But I will have to see if that's doable, but I think that will be doable. So there will be the full mockup for whoever wants to print them and playtest them, and there will be the black and white text-only version if we want to use those first. So again, I'll have to see if that's doable, but I think it will be. I just have to see if there is a way to do that quickly for each card, because every element is every piece of graphic is a different element. So you have one layer for the compass, one layer for the quote, one layer for the post-it element, one for the background, for the file, for the picture. So if I have to delete like 50 elements on each card, it will maybe take too long. But if it's just a matter of clicking on 2 or 3 things and only the text appears, then that's doable.
I'm not going to allow us to sign off, Nathan, before I say at least once, they killed Kenny.
Nice.
I did not even think of that.
Very nice.
I'm glad you waited until the end, because if you did that at the beginning, that's all I would have seen. The entire time.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think I didn't have the hood up right away, so that was a mid broadcast development. I think that really brought it home. Well
All
played.
right.
Well played.
Gentlemen, anything else you want to add before we close up shop here?
I want to see your draft of your own agent card, David. You've told me you've got a draft. You just won't share it with me. I've asked you twice on Messenger, and you've been very glib about it.
Very glib, or just flat out ignored you.
Exactly. Want to see it.
Yeah, I've got a great idea. I just need to sit down and write it. I've had some things going on, but yeah, I definitely want it. I want to play a game with it. I want to have another one with Dax cards as well. So let's plan on that. Yeah, everything else I want to ask, I can ask on Discord. It doesn't need to be on the thing here. If that's all, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for staying up late or getting up early. And until the next one.
Yeah,
all right.
Have a good night.
Good night, gentlemen.